Hey everybody, just before this video starts, if there are parts where my editing or delivery seems a bit choppy, I apologise sincerely. I've not edited or made a video in a long while and I haven't had a good chance to properly record. But anyway, aside from that, I hope you enjoy. Well, it's Christmas, and you know what that means. Being blinded by the lights people put up around the house, trying to put up with family members, and being savvy at Advent calendars not finished. But of course, there's also the Christmas specials a few shows can get, and this year it's time for Inside Number 9 to take on a more festive flair than usual. So, without further ado, let's get to talking about this year's Christmas special of Inside Number 9. Inside Number 9 has kind of had a certain link towards Christmas, or at the very least the season, as a few episodes are actually set around it. Take The 12 Days of Christine, which begins and ends at Christmas, or Love's Great Adventure, which revolves around an advent calendar. And of course, when Stephen Rees tried to do a Christmas special last time, they gave us The Devil of Christmas, which you could put on for all the family, until you remember how exactly that episode ends. Anyways, now Stephen Rees are ending 2022 and starting Series A with yet another Christmas special. So enough dilly-dallying, let's talk about the Bones of St. Nicholas. In this episode, we primarily focus on Dr. Jasper Parkway, a historian who decided to spend his Christmas Eve champing, that's camping in a church, inside a small church all revolving around the old figure of St. Nicholas, the first Santa Claus if you prefer. While inside, he's forced to spend the night with Dick, the church's main attendant, and Pierce and Posey, another couple who've decided to champ for the year. As the group spend more time around each other and the church, they soon learn more about St. Nicholas and just how exactly he's linked towards this church in particular, hinting that something sinister might be afoot. I'm going to try and not compare this episode with The Devil of Christmas too much, just on the basis that they're both Christmas specials, but when compared to that episode, The Bones of St. Nicholas is a more so straightforward and gothic affair, keeping a broad blanket of uneasiness over the viewer throughout most of the episode. This plays hand in hand with Stephen Rees' usual trick of combining both uneasiness and levity towards episodes of the show. While the setting itself is rife with the potential for horror, the atmosphere of Christmas and the cast contrast with it, proving a unique sense of warm humour to the episode. This also makes sense to the overall events of it. After all, a ghost story for Christmas isn't exactly the first thing you think of when you think of the season, but I don't think fans of the show would say no otherwise.
Oh, come on! Ghost story for Christmas? It's perfect!
Now that we've got the premise out of the way, let's talk about the characters, starting off with Dick, played brilliantly by Simon Callow. Usually with a story like this, you'd expect a character like Dick to be the main antagonist or foil of sorts, but no, he's just a very lovely character who mixes very well with the others. I also really have to give props to Simon Callow for just how well he switches from a warm, friendly demeanour to a more luring and oppressive voice when he tells the others about the ghost he saw. Truly captivating. Next we have the couple Pierce and Posey, who are mainly here to provide the comic relief of the episode, and they do that quite well. For me, they also provide some of the funniest lines of the episode, while also keeping a layer of sadness once their past, or rather Posey's past, is revealed to us, and Shobna Gulati really does an excellent job at her monologue during this scene. I also really appreciate the lighting of this scene. The really cool blues and shadows surrounding the entire church really make it to be a rather cold and somber affair, which is kind of ironic considering we're in a church for the episode. This scene can also give us a better insight into Pierce and his personality. Maybe he just uses humour as a way of masking, and you really do get the feeling that after so many years he still loves his wife regardless. And on that note, let's talk about Pierce. Reece Shearsmith really does a great job of these usually abrasive and humorous characters, and as usual he does a great job in this episode. Interestingly, Stephen Rees' characters in this episode is basically a role reversal from La Couchette, where we had this stern academic played by Reese and a more comedic character played by Steve, whereas here it's reversed. Also, did anyone else think this bit here was a jab at fans of the show who try to predict what will happen before an episode's finished, or am I just reading too much into this?
See me out.
Why don't you turn your torch on?
I didn't know it had one.
Carry on.
But since we're talking about characters now, let's turn our attention away to the final and quote-unquote main character of the episode, that of course being Dr. Parkway. When we're first introduced to him, his character seems to be pretty simple, an academic type who wants to do things in the name of science for traditional non-believer in the paranormal. However, as the story progresses, we start to see that Parkway is actually hiding the true reason for his stay, and once it's revealed that the actual jawbone of St. Nicholas is inside the church, we start to see his true colours bloom. Even at the start, when he receives the omen of what's to come, he's acting purely so nobody will know what he's doing, rather than because he's a bit scared at someone watching him. Parkway desperately wants to be alone in order to find the bones, even if he tells backstories that contradict each other, and he comes off as a bit stern to the other characters.
I should explain. My mother passed away earlier this year. She's buried out in the graveyard. I simply wanted to spend the night here in quiet contemplation.
This ultimately culminates in the ending, where Parkway finally finds the bones, inadvertently reenacting the figure's actions, but because of his pride and greed, he fails to recognize the danger that he faces. At the end of the relatively tense chase scene between him and Dick, it's the latter who receives the bones, to enjoy the prospect of holding old Nick's jaw rather than the fact that a guest of his is, hanging dead right above him. Ultimately, The Bones of St. Nicholas is an episode that mostly plays with the viewer with red herrings and foreshadowing in order to get to its eventual climax. The most obvious use of this would be the cloaked figure Dr. Parkway sees throughout the episode, which of course is later revealed to be a vision of the future and his eventual fate. But throughout, we're led to believe this cloaked figure is something else, possibly the ghost of St. Nicholas betraying his mythical protective persona. Honestly, a lot of moments in the episode could be foreshadowing from Dr. Parkway's omens to Posey's own vision of the future, or the past if you want to be a smartass. So, to end this video, I quite like The Bones of St. Nicholas. While I may have had a small cast, all the characters work well against each other, coupled with the slightly gothic, somber, and warm atmosphere shown in the episode. The episode itself is constantly trying to bait the viewer into thinking what may happen, although I think that can be said for any episode of the show, but the use of omens from the future and the setting certainly give it a unique flair. Also, this is technically the start of Series 8 for the show, and I'm glad to report that if this episode is anything to go for, then this series is already off to a good start. Also, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you all. It probably won't be Christmas or even 2022 by the time this video goes out, thank the BBC's bullshit copyright system for that, but I'm recording this literally on Christmas Day, so yeah, Merry Christmas.